Welcome to the week of July 13th. Let's talk about this week's workouts. We start with the high quality workout this week of a loaded steady state run, which is a steady state run, some speed, and another steady state run. Check Training Peaks to see your version of the workout. There's some variation in the distances of the steady state runs. So we start with a 2-mile steady state run at 80 to 85%, which can be aerobic threshold or anaerobic threshold. You can decide how hard you want to go. As a reminder, because we talked about this last week, aerobic threshold is as fast as you can go and stay aerobic. So it's a good, strong, relatively fast run, but it's very sustainable. When you get to that end of the 2 miles, you shouldn't be feeling like, boy, I really needed a break. I'm glad that's over, because it is a sustainable effort. Again, it's strong and it's fast, so keep that in mind, but it's very sustainable. And then after that first steady state run, if you want to take a minute jog or launch right into it, we're doing 5 times a minute fast and then 5 1-minute slow-mo recovery jogs. So we won't even worry about pace necessarily. If you have to walk on that minute recovery jog, you're going too fast. Sure, it should be fast. You might be breathing really hard. You might be going anaerobic at the end of that minute, but you should be able to recover enough in that very slow recovery jog to be able to sustain that type of effort through all 5 times the minute on. And then after that last 1-minute slow-mo recovery jog, we go back into the steady state run. And again, if you want to do those aerobically or your anaerobic threshold to where you are producing some lactic acid, but you can buffer it, that's fine. If you decide, well, maybe I want to start the steady state run with the aerobic threshold and do the second one at anaerobic threshold, that's a good way to do it as well. For those of you that are new, or for those of you who I haven't explained this for a while and don't know why I use the term steady state rather than something like tempo run, is because it's more specific. Tempo run begs the questions of how fast am I going? How hard am I going? It's a very ambiguous term. Steady state is your body's homeostasis at exercise. So we're trying to get to a level that everything is in balance and that you can maintain it for a while. And as we already talked about, that can be at an aerobic threshold level or an anaerobic threshold level. Either way, it's sustainable. So that's why we use the term steady state. Why are we doing minutes in the middle of this? We're doing it because anytime that we can take a certain level of work and add a little twist to it to get more benefit than the actual amount of work, we certainly want to do that. And by doing a steady state run, which is a good solid effort, and then coming in and doing 5 times a minute fast, perhaps anaerobic running, what we're doing is you're spiking your muscular tension. So think of that as going from a 10-pound dumbbell to a 15 or 20-pound dumbbell for a brief period of time. When you go back to that lighter dumbbell, it's a lot harder. Well, that's what we're doing. We're trying to set up that second steady state run. So if you finish this workout with 4 steady state miles, the training effect was at least 5, if not 6 steady state run miles. So that's why we do that. We're also getting the added benefit of buffering lactic acid, removing it quickly, and then also the benefits of fast running. So that's why we're doing that. Mentally, I think it's enjoyable to break up a workout like this. And if it was going to make it easier and reduce your training effect, well, we wouldn't do it. So we wouldn't do that just to make it mentally easier. But if we can make something a little mentally easier or give it more entertainment and more training effect, we're going to do that every time. Moderate quality workout this week. Continuous hills. And for those, it is, most of you have 20 to 30 minutes. We're just running up and down the hill for 20 or 30 minutes. Or if you prefer, and it's kind of nice because you can move from one hill to the next. If you want to do 2 to 3 times 10 minutes, so this hill for 10 minutes, this hill for 10 minutes, and maybe you find another hill for 10 minutes if you live in an area where that's possible. The reason that we're doing this is it's incredible strength training. And when we think about how do you run faster, one of the primary ways that you run faster is that you put more force into the ground, or you're stronger. And when you do that, your stride length is a little bit longer, so you're running faster. And as you get stronger and stronger, you're running faster at the same effort. So it's a pretty important thing for us to do. Now, some of you will have access to some great hills. Some of you have to scout out some hills ahead of time, and even then, maybe you're not finding a great one. Use what you have. If it's not as steep, that's okay. You'll just be running faster. If it's real steep, okay, you're slowing down. Maybe you're not going up as far up the hill before it gets difficult and you turn around and jog back down. That's fine. Use what you have. If you have a hill that's relatively short, if you want to start at the bottom of that, get the hill in early, and even if it flattens out a little bit, because we want these to last at least 15 seconds, if not 20 or 30 seconds, then you can jog back down to your start point and we can count that. Generally, we only want to count time up and down, but if by necessity you're having to hit the hill early and to get your 15 to 30 seconds, you're going on some flat, that's fine as well. So that's a great workout. And if you're not quite sure how beneficial that is, when you do it, it's pretty obvious that it's going to be beneficial. So be careful with this. Also, if you're on a slant running down the hill, that can be rough on especially your lower legs, but also your knees and your hips. So try to stay on relatively flat, even ground. Long run this week. Another endurance long run. We talked last week about how we're going to have back-to-back endurance long runs. And then typically we're going to be rotating shorter long runs with some quality with longer endurance long runs. And that will vary based on your race schedule and life schedule and a few other factors. But that's generally how it is set up going forward. Keep working on your long run lab. We talked about that last week, figuring out how much sugar, salt, and water you need to take in to feel strong at the end of a long run. Because if you can do that well in training, you can also do it well in racing and you'll feel strong at the end of your race. A great way to measure this is your pre and post run weights. And what I put in the newsletter or the email last week, talking about how much weight you can lose and how much impact that has on how you're feeling and your performance. You can kind of judge how you're doing with that. So get on the scale before you go run, get on the scale when you get back. Of course, if you weigh yourself with sweaty clothes on or in real warm and humid conditions, heavy sweaty shoes, that has an impact. So you have to take that into account, and hopefully you do it without those factors in it. So a question I got this week was, how slow should my long run be? And that's an interesting question, and I'm going to kind of flip that question a little bit here, but let's talk about the slow thing for a long run. The history on that is, especially maybe it started coming in the late 80s, but certainly 90s and 2000s, there was a lot of talk about your long run should be slow. There was even some crazy talk for a while about your long run should be 2 minutes slower than your marathon goal pace. That could be why people ran so slow in their marathons, because there's some things that happen when you run slow. There's some other things that don't, and most of the things that don't happen don't lead to good performance. The idea behind that was, the slower you run, you're taking more steps, so there's some level of repetition. Again, thinking about strength training, you're doing a lot more reps if you're out there longer, but also you're burning a higher percentage of fat. And we won't get too much into that, but that was purposeful and helpful for a while. But as our ability to take in carbohydrates has increased, because if we look at especially the early 70s, if you're going to take in carbohydrates during a race, it was defizzed Coke, and then it became Gatorade. And even Gatorade, if you're taking in 8 ounces, that's about 50 calories of carbohydrate, which isn't a whole lot. It certainly was helpful compared to 0, but it wasn't a whole lot. And then with the advent of gels in the late 90s, now you can take in more. Now you can take in 100 calories worth in that same amount of time. So you're able to double that much. So the reliance on fat and the wall at 20 miles, all those kind of things started getting a little fuzzier. And as that has advanced and people are taking in more and more, your ability to utilize fat is less of an issue when it comes to performance. Now, we still want to do that, because if you're better at that, it's only going to benefit you. But we don't want to trade slower long runs to be able to utilize more fat. So I would change that to how fast should your long runs be? And at the risk of sounding a little aggressive here, as fast as you can go. And, okay, here's the important caveats to that, and complete the long run. If you're scheduled for a 60-mile long run and you go out there and you're going too hard and at 12, I'm done. That's all I got. Okay, we're trading benefits here, so we're not adding to the benefit. So that was too fast. You need to slow down so that you can cover the distance of the long run. We also don't want to see a bonk or a crash. We don't want you to be running 8-minute pace to 8 miles and then 8:30 pace to 10 miles and then 9-minute pace or maybe walk jogging the last couple miles. So you want to be able to get through that with a relatively even pace. Hot, humid days, yes, we expect that you're going to slow down a little bit, and that's fine. But generally, we want to look at the first half and the second half of your long run, and they should be relatively close. If they're not, if we're looking at, oh, that was just a terrible weather day, okay, that's fine. In that case, starting slower might not have ended in a faster second half, but keep that pacing in mind. The other thing is we want a 2-day recovery. Why don't we run 26 miles in training? Why don't we do that as frequently as we can? The reason for that is the recovery cost of that for most people is so high. I know there's some of you that can run 26 miles and be recovered in a couple of days. Most people can't. So we have to think about, okay, we did the long run, we got as much training benefit out of that as possible, and we're recovered in 2 days, so now we can do the high quality workout 2 days later. So that's why we're set up, and the days don't matter, the pattern does, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So you have Sunday and Monday to recover, and then Tuesday we're back at it. If, especially for maybe high school runners that are doing an 8-mile long run, that doesn't get into the depletion or threatened depletion as long runs of 16, 20 miles do, we only need 1 day recovery. If you're in a maintenance mode, we only need 1 day recovery. But when we're going longer and trying to go faster, those 2 days of recovery really matter. So there's another week for you. We have a mix of stamina and speed in this workout. We're building some strength in this one with some power, and then we're building endurance with the long run. Have a great week.